Meantime, the federal government is banking on gas to fuel Australia's COVID recovery, but forecasts suggest domestic supply will fall short of demand within 3 years. What will this be caused by? Well, production declines in southern states mainly, increased uncertainty about existing northern reserves and increased seasonal demand, especially during the winter peak. The strategy describes greater local production in the northern market as essential to offsetting the decline, especially in Queensland around the Bowen and Surat basins. The production from new fields in existing offshore sites in Victoria as well. Now, 6 new import terminals are also being proposed in New South Wales, Port Kembla and Newcastle, in Victoria, at Crib Point, Geelong and Port Phillip Bay. And in South Australia, that would be at Port Adelaide. The federal government has released an interim plan ahead of next week's federal budget, which will include nearly $60 million to fire up the nation's gas-led recovery. For more, I'm joined by the Energy Minister Angus Taylor. He joins me live now from his electorate. Angus Taylor, good to see you. We keep on hearing about this gas-led recovery. Is it happening at the moment, or are you expecting that to fire up soon?
Oh, it's absolutely happening. We've seen substantial reductions in the cost of gas. That's helping to bring down the price of electricity. The wholesale price of gas is around half of where it was. Much of that had happened before COVID, by the way, Laura. But the announcement today is all about over $58 million to accelerate that supply into the market, to get gas to customers and to make sure customers are in a position to get a good deal and to have a transparent market they can buy from. And those initiatives include getting more storage into the system, more pipelines into the system, the import terminals, of course. You named a number of those in your introduction. It's important we have that, particularly for the seasonal gas supplies. And we've got to open up these new basins or emerging basins. The Bowen Basin, for instance, in Queensland, enormous potential, both for domestic use and for export. And there's commitment in that $58 million for that as well. So a broad set of initiatives accelerating supply into the market, getting gas out from under the ground, getting it to customers and empowering those customers.
This is a highly profitable industry. I guess many people would be asking why there's a bit of a pincer on taxpayers. At the one end, we're paying for a shortfall or at least some of this infrastructure at the front end, but we're also paying on the retail end. Why?
Well, what we've had in the past in the electricity grid is very, very detailed planning of that grid to make sure there's enough supply available for domestic usage. We haven't had that same process in gas. Now, gas investments have and continue to come from the private sector, and that's what we want to see. But accelerating the process of doing the feasibility studies, of getting those projects to financial close, making sure the infrastructure is going into place. There is a role for government. This is a reasonably modest investment for very significant gains, $58 million, just over $58 million, to close that gap that we see emerging in the southern states, get more gas out into the market to empower customers. And there's regulatory changes that have to be made here to support all of that. But what we know, Laura, is if you have more affordable gas, it's good for consumers. People who buy gas know that. It's good for manufacturing, 900,000 jobs in this country on the back of manufacturing. It's good for electricity prices because gas very often sets the price of electricity. So more gas means more affordable, reliable electricity.
Okay.
That's what we want to see. We have been seeing it and we want to see more of it.
If we're really talking about a gas-led recovery here, we talked about in the next 3 years there could be a bit of a dip. That's why you're making this $60 billion announcement ahead of the budget. But how much do people need to see off their gas bills to really see this gas-led recovery?
Well, there's many different users of gas. At the consumer end, of course, the electricity bills have embodied in it the gas price. In fact, the reductions, 9% reduction in electricity bills in the CPI in the last 12 months alone loss across Australia. Much of that can be attributed to more affordable gas in the system. Also, the gas price itself, and again, we've seen a reduction in the wholesale price. We now want to see that flowing through to retail. And then manufacturers, where the wholesale price is what really counts there. If you want to keep and strengthen manufacturing in this country, you need to have affordable, reliable energy. Gas is absolutely essential to that, both on the energy side and as a feedstock. used to produce critical products like fertiliser. And you need to have that affordable, reliable supply. We've seen very substantial reductions, as I said, in the wholesale price. But to contain that, to keep that, to get that flow through to customers, we've got to deal with this shortfall, particularly in the southern states, and that's what this plan is all about.
All right, the government here is intervening, and you laid out the case for why just then. Will it also intervene when it comes to propping up coal in the Hunter Valley?
Oh, I'm not quite sure what you got in mind there. There's no project that I understand that you're referring to there. But what I tell you, what we do want to make sure is that when Liddell closes in the Hunter Valley, that it's replaced. Right. That's crucial, and we need 1,000 megawatts of capacity. Very good news in the last week that Energy Australia has committed to over 300 of those megawatts in Tallawarra, in the Illawarra, near Wollongong. That's fantastic. It's private sector investment. They've been working on that for a long while. That will come in time for the closure of Liddell, and therefore will put downward pressure on prices. We're working through that remaining gap that has to be filled, and we'll have more to say about that in the coming days. But what we're not going to do is allow a gap to emerge, as we saw with Hazelwood a number of years ago, which you'll remember well, Laura. We saw a big increase in the wholesale electricity price. We're not going to stand by and watch that happen again, and that's why we've been pursuing the process we have.
So are you giving a little budget teaser then? Have we got a lot of money in the budget to, confirm this baseload power in Australia?
No, what I'm going to say is, and what I always will say is, 1,000 megawatt gap. If we don't fill that, there will be upward pressure on prices. We've got to put downward pressure on prices. It will be filled. Again, we've seen the Tallawarra project come in. We're working through those options, and we'll have more to say on that in the near future.
Okay, the near future being the budget pretty soon, which is Tuesday next week.
I'm not going to make an announcement here today on your program, much as you'd love me to, Laura, but today's not the day. But today is about that affordable, reliable gas, which is so crucial for our electricity supply, of course.
Okay, well, look, AGL spoke this week. AGL mentioned that, ending coal too early in this country, production would see a crash landing. I mean, in many ways, it's a statement of the obvious. No one is saying, to my knowledge, that coal needs to end in the next decade or two, are they?
Oh, I'm sure you'll find people who'll say that, but Graham Hunt, chairman of AGL, no. And anyone who has to deal with this day to day, as I do, and has a responsibility to keep the lights on and drive prices down. We all know that the only answer here is balance in the system. It's a mix of different fuel sources. There's lots of views out there that there's one fuel source that's the answer to everything. It's not. Gas is important. We're talking about that today, but so is the ongoing role of coal. We've got record levels of investment in household solar on people's roofs. Hydro plays a crucial role in the system. They're all playing different roles, and the balance is what works. And coal is part of that balance, and will be for many years. So
you didn't mention nuclear at all there. Well, has any country...
We don't have nuclear. We don't have nuclear in our system. I'm talking about what we've got now and how we're dealing with it.
Would you like to see it, though?
Well, look, there's a moratorium on nuclear, as you know, Laura, and to change that moratorium and to get community support for a project at a local level would require bipartisanship. That's a statement of, I think, the reasonably obvious, and right now we don't have that. Labor is strongly opposed to nuclear, and Anthony Albanese is strongly opposed to nuclear for whatever reasons. This will be an ongoing debate. In the meantime, we're seeing very significant improvements in the technology on nuclear, and we're going to watch those very, very closely and engage with those very, very closely with partner countries who are involved in that research. The United States, we actually are involved in quite significant nuclear research in this country through ANSTO as well. So that will be a strong focus for the government.